Let's genocide humanity.
In a mind-bending turn of events, the visionary Elon Musk has confirmed something that will leave you breathless. He's declared, in the most straightforward terms, that the rapture is going to happen very soon. Yes, you heard that right. Elon Musk, the man behind Tesla and SpaceX, is making a statement about a phenomenon that has captivated humanity for centuries. In this insightful journey, we're diving deep into what this means, why he believes it, and how it might change everything we know about the future. Join us as we explore Elon Musk's cryptic words and what they could mean for humanity's destiny, unveiling the mystery of the rapture. The concept of the rapture, a fascinating belief embraced by certain Christian circles, primarily within the passionate fold of American evangelicalism, envisions a climactic moment in the end times. At this extraordinary juncture, all departed Christian souls, having long awaited their divine summons, will experience a glorious resurrection. These resurrected saints will then unite with the living faithful, and together, like celestial rendezvous orchestrated by the heavens themselves, they will ascend skyward, seemingly defying earthly bounds to meet their Lord in the celestial realm. This awe-inspiring term finds its origins in the ancient pages of the first epistle to the Thessalonians within the sacred Bible. Here, the Greek word harpazo, meaning to snatch away or to seize, perfectly encapsulates the essence of this divine occurrence. This particular interpretation of the end times is commonly referred to as dispensational premillennialism, an intricate framework of futurism that posits various biblical prophecies as yet unfulfilled and destined to unfurl in the grand fabric of the future. Yet it's important to recognize that the concept of the rapture, as we understand it today, isn't woven into the fabric of historical Christian doctrine. It's a relatively recent theological innovation, with its roots tracing back to the vibrant theological discussions of the 1930s. This captivating term is often invoked within fundamentalist theological circles in the United States, where it carries immense significance. But the allure of the rapture extends beyond evangelicalism, for it has also been envisioned as a mystical union with the divine or a gateway to everlasting life in the glorious realms of heaven. Within this realm of theological wonder, debates flourish regarding the precise timing of this celestial gathering and the nature of Christ's impending return. One school of thought, known as pre-tribulationism, meticulously differentiates the rapture from the second coming of Christ as detailed in the Gospel of Matthew, 2 Thessalonians, and Revelation. According to this perspective, the rapture will herald the commencement of a 7-year tribulation period, culminating in the triumphant return of Christ, ushering in a blissful 1,000-year reign, the Messianic kingdom. The foundations of this theory can be traced to the diligent analysis of biblical translations undertaken by John Nelson Darby in 1833. Though prevalent among rapture believers today, it's essential to acknowledge the spirited debates that continue to swirl within evangelical circles. Notably, it's worth mentioning that the rapture remains a subject of fervent discussion. Some assert an alternative viewpoint known as the post-tribulation rapture, positing a different chronology of events in the grand eschatological scheme. However, it's important to emphasize that not all Christian denominations embrace rapture theology. Many interpret the biblical gathering described in 1 Thessalonians 4 differently. They shy away from using rapture as a theological catchphrase and steer clear of the premillennial dispensational framework. Instead, they envision an assembly of the elect with Christ in the celestial realm immediately following his second coming, firmly rejecting the notion that a substantial portion of humanity would be left behind to endure an extended tribulation period after the events of the 1 Thessalonians. Elon Musk confirms the rapture is going to happen very soon. In a fascinating interview with the Babylon Bee, the renowned billionaire and Tesla co-founder Elon Musk delved into a thoughtful and serious discussion about his views on Jesus Christ and religion. When asked whether he accepted Jesus as his Lord and Savior, Musk responded with a profound perspective. He shared, "I agree with the principles that Jesus advocated. There's some great wisdom in the teachings of Jesus, and I agree with those teachings." Musk went on to highlight some of the significant teachings of Jesus that resonated with him. He spoke of the importance of turning the other cheek instead of seeking revenge, emphasizing forgiveness, and treating others as we wish to be treated. He particularly stressed the value of the age-old adage, "Love thy neighbor as thyself." Elon Musk's openness was also apparent when it came to the idea of Jesus saving people. With a hint of optimism, he expressed, "Sure, I'll be saved, why not?" While Musk acknowledged his baptism as a child, he candidly admitted to having many questions about God, faith, and the stories of Jesus in the Bible. Though not deeply religious, Musk did mention that he prayed for this opportunity to discuss such a significant topic. He believed that this conversation had immense significance for humanity. As he put it, this is something that the whole world can take some pleasure in and can look at this as an achievement of humanity. In challenging times where good news is often scarce, he hoped that this dialogue could be universally celebrated and brighten people's days, regardless of where they were on Earth. Rapture, second coming, or both. In the realm of biblical prophecy, there's a captivating divide among those who embrace premillennial beliefs. They sketch a clear line between what they call the rapture and the second coming. It's a grand narrative with two distinct chapters, both revolving around the glorious return of Jesus. In this tale, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 15 through 17 sets the stage for the first chapter. It's like the opening act that sets the tone for the grand finale, as described in Matthew chapter 24, verses 29 through 31. These events share a common theme, the return of Jesus, but they're like two unique performances on the same stage. The first act is what we call the rapture. It's the moment when the faithful are caught up. Imagine being whisked away in a flash of divine light. This is where the term rapture finds its origin. It's an electrifying scene, a divine rescue mission. Now the second act is the second coming. This is when Jesus returns in all his glory. It's the grand crescendo of the cosmic story. Some premillennialists believe the first act unfolds before a time of tribulation, a period of trials and tests. They see it as the most literal interpretation of what the Apostle Paul taught. On the flip side, we have the amillennialists. They don't buy into the idea of a 1,000-year earthly reign of Christ. For them, there's no chapter division. It's a one-act play. It's a belief embraced by many, including Catholics, Eastern Orthodox Christians, Anglicans, and Lutherans, as well as postmillennialists and historic premillennialists like Calvinistic Baptists. Some even trace the roots of amillennialism back to ancient scholars, like Clement and Origen in Alexandria. Augustine, a towering figure in Christian theology, played a key role in cementing it as a core belief in the Catholic Church. In their view, there's no need to split the story. It's all one magnificent public event. The diverse beliefs about the rapture and its timing. The concept of the rapture is a topic that sparks a wide range of interpretations and beliefs among Christians. Central to this discussion is the immediate destination of those who are raptured. Dispensationalists firmly hold that this event leads Christians directly to the gates of heaven, ushering them into the divine presence. Catholic scholars like Walter Drum in 1912 are in harmony with this perspective. They too identify the ultimate gathering described in 1 Thessalonians 4 verse 17 as a journey to heaven. It's a vision of a celestial reunion, a union with the divine in the grandeur of the heavens. However, within the Anglican tradition, there's a diversity of viewpoints. Notably, theologians like N.T. Wright offer a unique interpretation. They suggest that the destination of this gathering might be a specific earthly location. This concept can be linked to concerns within the Christian environmentalist community, hinting at a focus on the earthly realm, perhaps in the context of stewardship and care for the planet. Turning to the question of when this event is set to occur on the eschatological timeline, there's a fascinating array of perspectives. Some argue that the rapture could be alluded to in Matthew chapter 24, verses 37 through 40. They emphasize the striking similarities between the texts, implying that the rapture might coincide with the parousia of the Lord. This perspective envisions a synchronized, majestic event when the faithful are lifted to meet their Lord. Conversely, others point out that neither the church nor the rapture are explicitly mentioned in Matthew 24. They meticulously dissect the nuances between Matthew chapter 24, verses 37 through 40, and 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 13 through 18. As a result, these two texts become focal points of debate and contemplation in discussions regarding the timing of the rapture. The meticulous analysis reveals significant differences, leaving room for diverse interpretations. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 15 through 17, the American Standard Version offers a vivid portrayal of the event. It speaks of those who are eagerly awaiting the Lord's arrival and those who have passed away, rising to meet him. It paints a picture of the Lord's descent from heaven, accompanied by celestial announcements, the commanding voice of an archangel, and the resounding call of God's trumpet. The departed in Christ are the first to rise, followed by those who are still among the living. Together they ascend into the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, destined to be forever in his divine presence. In contrast, Matthew chapter 24, verses 37 through 40, draws a parallel to the days of Noah. It depicts a world absorbed in mundane activities, much like eating, drinking, marrying, and giving in marriage. Then, in a sudden turn of events, one is taken and another is left. A spectrum of eschatological beliefs. When it comes to the timing of the rapture, there's a spectrum of eschatological beliefs. From amillennial and postmillennial perspectives, there's no distinction made in the timing of the rapture. These viewpoints assert that the rapture described in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 15 through 17 aligns with the second coming of Jesus as delineated in Matthew chapter 24, verses 29 through 31. This harmonizes with a spiritual or symbolic millennium, suggesting a spiritual interpretation of these events. In the premillennial view, the rapture is anticipated to occur before a literal earthly millennium. This belief holds a unique place in Christian eschatology, imagining a world transformed for 1,000 years before the ultimate culmination. Within premillennialism, the pre-tribulation stance separates the rapture and the second coming into distinct, sequential events. It envisions a rapture preceding a 7-year tribulation period, culminating in Christ's second coming and followed by a 1,000-year messianic kingdom. This theory has its roots in the translations of the Bible, notably analyzed by John Nelson Darby in 1833. While pre-tribulationism is the most widespread view among Christians who believe in the rapture today, it is by no means uncontested within evangelical circles. Some proponents of a post-tribulation rapture advocate for a different sequence of events. Premillennialist views. In the early days of the Church, there was a widely held belief called Chiliasm. This belief, rooted in the teachings of Eusebius, suggested that many centuries would pass after the resurrection of the dead. Eusebius believed that the kingdom of Christ would physically appear on earth, and this idea influenced other early church leaders like Irenaeus. They used Eusebius's teachings to support their views, pointing to the ancient origins of these ideas. This perspective is supported by Schaff, who confirmed that Chiliasm, also known as millenarianism, was a significant part of the beliefs about the end times in the early church. Chiliasm proposed that Christ would have a visible reign on earth, alongside resurrected saints, for 1,000 years before the final judgment. However, as time passed, a theological divide emerged, leading to two different schools of thought, the Antiochene and Alexandrian schools. The Alexandrian school can be traced back to the influence of Philo, a Hellenized Jewish scholar who tried to reconcile divine truths with what he saw as inconsistencies in the Tanakh. Theologians from this tradition believed that the millennium, the 1,000-year reign of Christ, was symbolic. They thought it represented Christ's rule from the heavenly realm rather than a literal earthly kingdom. This allegorical interpretation became dominant and lasted for over 1,000 years, largely due to the influence of scholars like Origen and Augustine, both of whom were followers of the Alexandrian school. In contrast to the growing popularity of allegorical interpretations, the Antiochene school strongly advocated for a literal approach to interpreting religious texts. They believed in taking the words more directly and not reading too much symbolism into them. However, they didn't put forth extensive efforts to challenge the symbolic millennium proposed by the Alexandrians. In the 12th century, a surge of anticipation for the future unfolded, guided by the thoughts of Joachim of Fiore. This forward-looking thinker, living from 1130 to 1202, embarked on a fascinating journey through the book of Revelation. He painted a vivid picture of the imminent day's end, foretelling a rejuvenation of our earth, the embracing of Jewish people into a new faith, and a remarkable era, known as the Millennium, descending upon our world. His teachings cast a wide net of influence, captivating hearts and minds across Europe. Yet, within the confines of the Catholic Church, a more future-focused reading of biblical prophecies, like those penned in the books of Daniel and Revelation, wasn't the norm. This was until 1590 when a Jesuit of the Catholic faith, Francisco Ribera, shook the foundation with his visionary insights. He proposed the notion of a grand event called the Gathering of the Elect, akin to what we now recognize as the Rapture. Ribera's theory painted a vivid image of this event transpiring just 45 days before the culmination of a 3.5-year tribulation period. Fast forward to the 17th century and across the ocean in America, the Puritans' Increase and Cotton Mather lit the fuse of what we now call the Rapture Doctrine. Their belief was nothing short of captivating. They envisioned a scenario where believers would be plucked from Earth into the celestial skies, followed by divine judgments sweeping across our planet. And then, the Millennium, a golden age of divine reign, would unfurl. But these ideas didn't stop with the Mathers. They found resonance in the works of Robert Mayton, Nathaniel Holmes, John Brown, Thomas Vincent, Henry Danvers, and William Sherwin, all of whom added their unique brushstrokes to this captivating canvas of faith. While the precise term rapture wasn't employed, the concept itself was taking a more concrete shape. The 17th century was a hotbed of rapture development, but it wasn't until Edward Irving entered the scene in the early 19th century that the idea truly started to blossom. Born in 1792, Irving was a visionary scholar who, in 1825, delved deeply into the realm of prophecy. Here, he discovered a profound concept, a two-phase return of Christ. The first phase, he believed, involved a clandestine rapture event that would precede the ascent of the Antichrist, a character often associated with apocalyptic events. Edward Miller, a contemporary of Irving, further crystallized this visionary perspective. He described it as a trilogy of gatherings. First, a collection of the first fruits of the harvest, symbolized by the wise virgins who follow the Lamb. Second, a subsequent gathering of an abundant harvest by God. And lastly, the assembly of the wicked, who would face their just punishment. In this fabric of theological thought and speculation, the concept of the rapture gradually evolved and matured. Each figure, from Joachim of Fiore to the Mathers, and finally to Edward Irving and Edward Miller, contributed their unique strokes, adding depth and complexity to this intriguing and, for many, captivating idea of a future event that would elevate the faithful and set the stage for a dramatic transformation of the world. The rapture, as we know it today, is a result of centuries of thought, interpretation, and visionary insight, blending history, theology, and a dash of the mystical to create a captivating narrative of hope and transcendence. The pre-tribulation rapture. The pre-tribulation belief presents a fascinating view of future events in Christian eschatology. According to this perspective, the rapture, a moment when Jesus takes his followers, will occur before a 7-year tribulation period, while his second coming will take place at the end of this turbulent time. Advocates of this view often explain the rapture as the moment when Jesus comes for his followers, while the second coming signifies his return to the church. The roots of this belief can be traced back to the early 19th century, when a man named John Nelson Darby introduced and popularized the pre-tribulation rapture theory in 1827. This viewpoint found its initial foothold within various Plymouth Brethren movements in England. Darby, alongside other influential figures within the Brethren movement, profoundly impacted American Christianity through their contributions to Christian eschatology and fundamentalism, primarily through their writings. The influence of Darby and his contemporaries extended beyond their written words. The Bible Conference movement, which commenced in 1878 with the Niagara Bible Conference, played a significant role in promoting futurist premillennial views and the pre-tribulation rapture. These gatherings, which initially explored both historicist and futurist premillennialism, gradually led to the growing acceptance of the latter, especially among Presbyterian, Baptist, and Congregational adherents. Additionally, popular publications were pivotal in fostering the widespread acceptance of the pre-tribulation rapture. William E. Blackstone's book, Jesus is Coming, published in 1878, reached an astonishing 1.3 million copies in sales. The Schofield Reference Bible, initially published in 1909 and 1919, with a subsequent revision in 1967, also played a vital role in disseminating this belief to a wider audience. One interesting facet of the pre-tribulation rapture theory is its historical roots, which some proponents claim can be traced back even further. They point to a 7th century document known as the Apocalypse of Pseudo-Ephraim the Syrian, as one of the earliest references to the concept. The text contains a passage that reads, "For all the saints and elect of God are gathered before the tribulation that is to come, and are taken to the Lord, lest they see the confusion that is to overwhelm the world because of our sins." While scholars debate the authenticity and interpretation of this text, it adds an intriguing layer to the history of the pre-tribulation belief. Several other documents from the 18th and 19th centuries also contain references to a pre-tribulation rapture. One such reference comes from an essay published in 1788 by Baptist theologian Morgan Edwards in Philadelphia. This early articulation of the concept hints at the idea's longevity. In 1812, Catholic priest Manuel Lacunza, writing under the pseudonym Juan Josafat ben Ezra, penned an apocalyptic work titled La Venida del Mesías en Gloria y Majestad, which was first published in 1811, a decade after his passing. In 1827, this work was translated into English by the Scottish minister Edward Irving, contributing to the spread of the pre-tribulation viewpoint. The 1970s witnessed a resurgence in the popularity of the rapture belief, largely attributed to the works of Hal Lindsey. His book, The Late Great Planet Earth, reportedly sold between 15 million and 35 million copies, and the film A Thief in the Night, inspired by the scriptural reference in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 2, captivated audiences with its portrayal of the impending rapture, based on the world's conditions at the time. However, it was in 1995 that the doctrine of the pre-tribulation rapture truly gained mainstream recognition with the release of Tim LaHaye's Left Behind series of books. These books sold nearly 80 million copies and inspired several film adaptations and even real-time strategy video games. Intriguingly, some scholars, such as Thomas Ice, argue that the concept of a pre-tribulation rapture can be discerned in the writings of various church fathers and early Christian authors. This perspective reveals a rich and diverse history, reflecting the evolving theological landscape and its impact on modern Christian thought. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. Elon Musk confirms the rapture is going to happen very soon. This stunning revelation sends shockwaves through the world and leaves us pondering, what does this mean for our future? Is it a warning or a promise? With one man's words, uncertainty looms. The promise of the unknown grips us. What lies ahead? Are we ready for it? Musk's enigmatic statement beckons us to confront our deepest beliefs, forcing us to question the reality we know. A world on the cusp of transformation awaits. The countdown begins. Are you prepared for the imminent shift that could change everything? Let us know in the comments below. Rapture amid tribulation. The mid-tribulation perspective offers an intriguing take on the rapture. Unlike some other views, mid-tribulationists believe this rapture will happen right in the middle of this tribulation, which is usually divided into two parts, each lasting 3.5 years. In this view, faithful individuals are expected to endure the initial phase of the tribulation, often referred to as the beginning of travail. However, before the more intense divine wrath arrives during the latter half, known as the Great Tribulation, they will experience the rapture, ascending to the heavenly realm. To support their stance, mid-tribulationists frequently cite Daniel chapter 7 verse 25, a prophetic passage. It predicts that saints will undergo tribulation for a period described as time, times, and half a time, which they interpret to mean 3.5 years. When this period reaches its midpoint, it is prophesied that the Antichrist will commit a grievous act known as the abomination of desolation by defiling the sacred temple in Jerusalem. This perspective offers a unique understanding of the rapture's timing within the context of Daniel's 70th week. While it's not as widely accepted as some other views, it provides a thought-provoking perspective on the sequence of events during this crucial period in eschatology. The pre-wrath rapture perspective offers a unique lens through which to understand end-time events in a way that's both accessible and insightful. This view places the rapture, an event where believers are taken up to meet the Lord, right within the tribulation period before Christ's second coming. It's like a climactic moment in a thrilling story. Imagine a 7-year period known as Daniel's 70th week, where things get intense. In the later stages of these 7 years, trouble starts brewing for the church. This is when the Antichrist makes his ominous appearance within the temple. The latter half of these 7 years, equivalent to 3.5 years, is tagged as the Great Tribulation. However, we don't know exactly how long this intense period will last, adding an element of suspense to the story. Support for this interpretation comes from passages in the books of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. These passages suggest that the tribulation will be cut short by the arrival of Christ. It's as if the hero is about to step in just when things seem darkest. When Christ does arrive, that's when the righteous are saved through the rapture. It's a moment of great relief after enduring significant challenges. Now, here's where it gets even more fascinating. The rapture occurs after specific events described in the book of Revelation. As the 6th seal is opened, the sun darkens and the moon takes on a crimson hue, creating a breathtaking scene. Up until this point, many Christians may have faced persecution at the hands of the Antichrist. So, the rapture is a turning point in the story where the tables start to turn. But the story doesn't end there. After the rapture, God's divine plan unfolds further in what's known as the 7th seal wrath. This is like the climax of the story, where divine justice is served. It includes events like the sounding of trumpets and pouring of bowls, often called the Day of the Lord. During this period, divine retribution is meted out to the unrighteous. It's a dramatic and awe-inspiring moment in the narrative and lasts for the remaining 7 years. Selective rapture in perspective. The theory known as partial, conditional, or selective rapture posits that all devout Christians will experience the rapture before the onset of the Great Tribulation. This occurrence hinges upon the individual's proximity to God, distinct from their mere affiliation with Him as believers, regardless of their degree of fellowship. Consequently, some proponents of this theory maintain that the timing of one's conversion before the Great Tribulation determines their rapture status. Other adherents of this theory suggest that only those who maintain unwavering faith and a deep, authentic connection with God will partake in the rapture, while the remaining believers will be resurrected during the Great Tribulation, specifically between the 5th and 6th seals of the book of Revelation. These individuals, tragically, will have met their demise during this tumultuous period. Alternatively, a differing perspective is held by those who anticipate that the remaining believers will undergo rapture either during the tribulation or upon its conclusion. To quote Ira David, an advocate of this viewpoint, "The saints will be raptured in successive groups during the tribulation, following their readiness." In the theological perspective known as post-tribulation premillennialism, the concept of the rapture aligns closely with the second coming of Jesus or a meeting with Him in the skies that directly precedes His return to earth, just before the commencement of a literal millennium. Within this framework, the rapture is positioned at the culmination of the tribulation period. Post-tribulation scholars define the tribulation period either broadly, encompassing the entire current era, or more specifically, as a period preceding Christ's second coming. The central tenet of this viewpoint is that the church will experience the tribulation. A key scriptural reference supporting this perspective is found in Matthew 24, verses 29 through 31, which states, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days, they shall gather together His elect." Post-tribulationists perceive the rapture as a simultaneous event with the second coming of Christ. When Jesus returns, believers will be caught up to meet him in the sky and then accompany him on his journey back to earth. The epistles of Paul, especially passages like 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 verses 16 through 17 and 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verses 51 through 52, depict the sounding of a trumpet after the tribulation as a herald of Christ's return, with support from Revelation chapter 11 verse 15. Additionally, within the context of the book of Revelation, chapters 6 through 19, and subsequently chapter 20 verse 1 through 3, when Satan is bound, Revelation chapter 20 verse 4 through 6 describes, "And they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. But the rest of the dead lived not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection." Beyond temples and sacrifices, amillennialists have an interesting view of Christ's rule. They think that his reign is happening right now, starting with the church's founding. This rule continues until Christ returns. They see Christ ruling with his followers through sacred ceremonies like the Eucharist and within his church. The church, they believe, is where Christ's kingdom began, especially during the special events of Pentecost. But they think it won't be finished until Christ returns. They see the 1,000 years in the book of Revelation as symbolic, representing the ongoing time of the church. Amillennialists don't use the term rapture much, but they expect something like it when Christ comes again. They believe the final days started at Pentecost, and the Great Tribulation will happen near the end of this long period before Christ returns. What makes them different from premillennialists is their focus on Christ's rule throughout the New Covenant's different phases, whether in the past, present, or future. They interpret mentions of Jerusalem in Revelation as connected to a new Jerusalem or a new heaven and new earth. They believe the church is laying the foundation for this messianic kingdom which is already here. In contrast to some premillennialists, they don't think rebuilding the Jerusalem temple is necessary or valid. They believe Christ's sacrifice on the cross fulfilled the need for animal sacrifices. Historically, figures like St. Augustine supported the amillennialist view. Today, it's held by various major Christian traditions, including Catholics, Eastern Orthodox, Anglicans, Lutherans, Methodists, Presbyterians, and Reformed congregations. It's a deep theological perspective that highlights Christ's ongoing rule and the Church's spiritual role in preparing for a bright future. If the rapture were imminent, what's the first thing you would do? Let us know in the comments below.